God loves to use other people in our lives to show how much He loves us. That is a very critical thing to remember. Why? Because through our friendships, God can mold us into the image of His Son, Jesus. God can show His love and remind us how much He loves us, how much He cares about us, about every part of our lives. But that only works if we, in the tough moments, understand that friends are important to have. What's going on, fam? Welcome to the Adonime podcast, where we watch anime with the redemptive eyes of a Christian believer. My name is Manny, I'm your host, and today we're going to be doing the season 1 review for the anime Many Losing Heroines, where I'll be splitting the episode with spoiler-free content and then finishing it off with the spoilers and a final ranking for the season, and seeing how much good content it has and anything that we need to watch out for as Christian believers. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So Many Losing Heroines is a comedy slash romance slash school setting type of anime. And this anime came out in summer 2024. So it's fairly new as of now. It's also PG-13 and it's made by A1 Pictures. This is the studio that created this anime. And it's actually based off a light novel instead of a manga this time. So just to summarize this anime, in Many Losing Heroines, we follow Kazuhiko Nukumitsu, a quiet first-year high school student who sees himself as nothing more than a background character in life. He's not really into the whole teen romance thing until he accidentally gets pulled into the center of one. So after witnessing his popular classmate Anna get publicly rejected by her childhood friend, Nukumitsu becomes her unexpected confidant. But things don't stop there. Before he knows it, he gets tangled up in the emotional lives of not just Anna, but 2 other girls, Lemon, the energetic athlete, and Chica, the shy bookworm. So with each of them facing heartbreak in different ways, Nukumitsu goes from background character to reluctant lead in a messy, heartfelt, and often hilarious romantic drama. So it's a rom-com with a twist where the so-called quote-unquote losing heroines might just find more than they expected in the unlikeliest of main characters. All right, so I'm going to begin with the non-spoiler content, and we're going to go through our 5 Christian categories for this anime. So the first category is sex and nudity. Okay, so this anime has a lot of sensual jokes and references, and it's sprinkled onto most of the anime. It also has scenes with bathing suits, which for some people it could be really uncomfortable. In this anime, there is a nurse who is subject to a lot of sexual jokes and conversations. So she is bringing these out to the main characters of the anime, and that can be really uncomfortable as well. And there's also an episode in this anime where there's a character who dresses as a succubus spirit, which a succubus is sexual spirit. So not a good thing there. There are some scenes in the anime where there's boobs in the face, mostly used for comedic relief, but a little uncomfortable to watch. There's also a scene where there's a couple, just a random couple, and they're licking a big popsicle pretty sensually. That can be a little uncomfortable to watch too. So it's a little bit of all these things throughout the anime, and that can be really uncomfortable for us to watch. The next category is violence and gore. There is none. I didn't know any violence or gore in this first season, except for some minor hits, but they're like punches or slaps. No big deal. I did catch one word of profanity, is the B word. And if I remember correctly, it was used just once. And that's it. Other than that, it's language-wise, it's pretty clean. Drugs and alcohol, there were no drugs and alcohol in this season, but there was a scene where one of the characters is pretending to smoke. Not a big deal, but just thought I would note it. Scary scenes, the other category. There is a scene where where there's this crazy girl who looks like she's about to murder somebody with some gardening tools. It could be a little creepy, not gonna lie, a little scary, but it's very brief and then it ends up being for fun, like funny. So not a big deal, but just watch out for that too. So finally, let's get into some biblical points. Okay, biblical points and then negative points, and then we'll hit the spoiler content. So some of the biblical points I saw. The first one thing I really liked about this anime was how it was promoting helping people feel better about their appearance and their self-esteem. Okay, so one of the verses that it reminded me of was Psalm chapter 139, verse 14. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. So this anime does actually a pretty good job with promoting that, with promoting feeling good about yourself, about your appearance, of how God made you, and not necessarily be happy with our flaws, but understand that we are flawed as humans in general. But when we put our faith in Christ and we know that we're going to live with him in eternity and we will be as he is, perfect as he is in body and mind, in everything, we know that we will be perfect. Not necessarily, we won't all look alike. Well, at least that's not the way I understand it. But we all are important to God in how he made us physically, how he makes us with our personalities. We all are fearfully and wonderfully made. We all are made in God's image. So it's important to have good self-esteem. It's important to be content with how God has made us. The next biblical point that I really enjoyed about this anime is Chica, who's one of the main characters. She deals with social anxiety and loneliness. So this anime is showing how she is, right? She has this social anxiety. She feels very lonely. And because of that, a lot of people around her are strangers to her, right? And I really like how they deal with this because as Chica is starting to open up more, she's realizing how much she can really befriend people when she's open about her struggles and stuff. So this really reminded me of the Bible verse, First Peter chapter 5 verse 7. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Right? So I think with her testimony, right, with Chica's testimony, we see that she starts opening up, right? And that's opening other doors for her personality to show in many different ways. But her example is a beautiful example of when we cast our cares and our anxieties before God, how he can help us deal with them, how he can help us through them, right? I myself personally, I deal with a lot of anxieties, social anxiety, not necessarily loneliness, but my anxiety would be a big deal for me. I would be anxious to talk to people, very nervous all the time, and once I learned to be open with them, with the people around me, at least those close to me, that they saw that I was intentional about moving forward. I was intentional about growing. I would be open with them that I have anxiety, some anxiety issues. And they were really friendly towards me, understanding, especially this day and age, how that's a pretty big deal, mental health. So those are things that happen to a lot of people this day and age. And if we don't learn to deal with that, we can stay in that dark place for a long time and never experience true freedom. So once I started being open with that, with God, in prayer, asking him for help with my anxieties, he allowed me to be able to open up to people around me as well, those that I could trust, people who were also believers and wanted to help me, and didn't judge me for feeling a certain type of way. And that really opened a lot for me to be free in that sense. So we could definitely take that from this anime. I really appreciate Chica for that. How they made her in that way and how she started to transform little by little in the anime. Next point. There were actually some realistic lessons about relationships, and they were pretty relatable. I'm not gonna get too into it because then it'll be a spoiler, but I'll address it a little bit later with more details. But it does have some realistic lessons for us to learn in regards to relationships, and it's worth noting and it's worth appreciating. Another thing is that they address gossip, hurtful words in secret, and it's showing how it can hurt and affect other people around them. Even if you think that person's not listening to you, they could be them or someone that's connected to the person that you're talking about. It can cause damage. It can cause damage, and I think this anime does a good job of dealing with that, and that was a great little lesson too. Another biblical point I found was finding contentment in the way things are, right? In this case, being single, and while being single, being happy for others, right? I'll get into that a little bit later, but it reminded me of the Bible verse, 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 6. But godliness with contentment is great gain. Okay, so right, this contentment applies to all the areas of our lives, really. Being content in what God has given you and how God is working in you and through you, right? So not necessarily just about relationships, but in this anime, they make it a point to being content with singleness. And that's also something that the Apostle Paul taught us in the scriptures as well, to be content in the singleness, to live your life for God, to dedicate your life for God. And, if God calls you for marriage or having a family, then those are great things, obviously. But being content in singleness, I think I really appreciate that lesson because it's not said enough in this day and age. And I think it's starting to grow, but we still need to get there where, our life goal shouldn't be having a family. It's a great goal to have, but then when you don't have it and you realize, man, life is not working out for me because I don't have a family, that there's more to life than just having a family, right? When we put our lives in God's hands, we can trust him with everything that he puts on our plate, and he will help us to be content in every area of our lives. So that's another great point. And the last positive point that I'm going to share is celebrating those who find love while also honoring your own journey, how God writes every story differently, right? So it kind of goes with the last point that I shared, but it's so crucial. I think it's so crucial, and I love how they did that in this anime, understanding how God has a different plan for everybody, but in the end, the final plan is Jesus, is to be with Jesus. That is our final destination is not having a spouse. It's not No, it's being with Jesus, having a marriage with Jesus. That is the only point of life, because he is the fountain of life. And we will be fully content when we are with him, and we can find honor in our own journey so that we can always give him thanks for that. So those were my positive points for this anime without any spoilers. To the negative points, I honestly only have one that I can share without spoilers, and it's the sexual scenes. That's it. All of these sensual jokes and there are scenes when it almost gets to nudity, like almost getting into details, and I'm like, man, it's terrible, because you see all of the positive points I brought, and sprinkled around the whole season 1 are these little snippets of not sexual, but sensual. And honestly, it puts a really bad taste in my mouth watching a good show that has really good content, really good lessons, but has this sprinkled all around it, and it's really uncomfortable. So we definitely have to be mindful with those things. So now I'm gonna be hitting the spoiler content. So be aware. I just told you. Be warned. You were warned. All right. Spoiler content. Okay. Let's go with the positive points first. There's a touching moment when Chica, we talked about her earlier, she gets rejected by a guy, right? So she confesses herself to this guy and she gets rejected. Um, but after her rejection, she's the one that makes the first move to move on. And she has peace with him, the guy that rejected her. And the guy that she likes another girl, likes a different girl. And she knew this, but she wanted to put herself out there. But she wanted to make peace with him and the girl that he likes. And she wanted to prioritize friendship over everything. And that was beautiful. That was a beautiful moment. I almost cried. I'm not gonna lie. That was an accomplishment, a human accomplishment. Like it was such a great scene, and it reminded me of Romans chapter 12, verse 18. If possible, so far it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Right? So there was something that Chica really wanted. She really wanted to be with this guy. She had strong feelings for him. She knew that he probably liked a different girl, but she just wanted to put herself out there. She wanted to just bring it to light. And unfortunately, it didn't go as she planned, but she maintained the priority, the friendship. And it can definitely encourage us as believers to, even though you might have a situation with someone or different people where it doesn't go the way that you wanted them to be, you can still be able to find peace with those people. And it won't automatically happen. That's not like a guarantee that you can find peace with everyone, right? But and there are certainly different people that you can have peace with, but not necessarily have to stick around, right? But in this context where you want a friendship, you want to keep the friendship, you prioritize the friendship, but you also wanted to take the risk. And you did, but man, we can definitely learn from Chica in this part where peace with everyone, even though it may be awkward, and you will get there. It takes time and a lot of prayer and guidance, biblical guidance too. But man, such a great lesson, such a great scene to watch. The next positive point is Chica again. I think you guys are starting to notice who my favorite character is in the show. It's definitely Chica. So Chica is wanting to work hard to be a leader and to rely on others. Right? So this goes back to also her dealing with social anxiety and dealing with loneliness. She gets chosen to be a leader for this book club. So now this is her trying to come out of her shell. And because she deals with loneliness, she doesn't want to rely on others, especially because of her social anxiety. She doesn't know how to open up just yet. So she makes it her mission. Okay. She wants to be a leader. She has those leadership qualities, but she has this thorn on her side, if we could say it like that she is trying to get past. And thankfully, because of her good friends that she has, she's able to get past it and she was able to learn from those things. And it was not easy. It was not easy for Chica at all. It was very difficult and it took some time, but she was able to grow. She was able to grow past it. So Chica is now learning to rely on others, right? Being a leader doesn't mean being alone. Okay, it's relying on others to help you as well, to lead well, right? So she has people behind her as she's becoming a leader that are helping her as well. And that is important to remember about leadership. The leadership is not just because the one person can do everything and that's it. No, it's a leader, a real leader has people behind them, helping them and teaching them and helping them grow as well. They just have a role of making the big decisions and understanding the vision of where the group is going, right? So that was great. I love that as well. Another positive point is that I saw is feeling broken over being selfish in relationships. Right? So there is a scene where one of the characters is broken because she feels that she's been selfish in her relationship and it's caused a lot of issues in the relationship. So she has to learn how to think of the other person as well. So I love that the anime was showing this, how we can be guilty of that in relationships. It's pretty common to be guilty of selfishness in relationships, but instead of thinking about no, I just like it's all about how what I want, how I want it. No, it's thinking of the other person as well. It's not that person needs to match whatever I want. No, it's a teamwork, right? So I really appreciated that about the anime as well. Another positive point is how friendships blossom from tough moments in life. And this is definitely a good message that has come from this anime. It reminded me of Proverbs chapter 17, verse 17. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. God loves to use other people in our lives to show how much he loves us. That is a very critical thing to remember. Why? Because through our friendships, God can mold us into the image of his son Jesus. God can show his love and remind us how much he loves us, how much he cares about us, about every part of our lives. But that only works if we, in the tough moments, understand that friends are important to have. It's important to have friends now, especially because one day we will go through really tough times and we have to be open to letting those friends help us and pick us up from those times, right? So that's another great lesson that this anime gave. Another positive point I saw, well, actually, it's more of an addition to the last point, but the hardest seasons often produce the strongest bonds, and God uses brokenness to build real community, right? I think that's where when a friendship is tested, right? In the tough times in a friendship, that's when the friendship is tested, and that's when a diamond can really start to come out from the friendship, right? If you have just friends that are all about the good times, only about the good times, only stick around for the good times, but don't work with you through the tough times, maybe they weren't real friends at all. And that's a hard thing to learn too. That, the person that you probably thought you cared about a lot or whatever, when it comes to tough times, they disappear. And that can be a real shame. But it's also important for us to be intentional about being that person that fights for the friendship, right? Maybe the person might be struggling with something, maybe something you did, or maybe something they did, and they might need your help to save the friendship, right? We have to be intentional about doing it ourselves instead of maybe coming to a place in that friendship where we're like, maybe I don't care about them that much, and whatever. It is what it is. The friendship is over. I don't really care that much. But maybe if you can push through this tough time in the friendship, maybe it would turn into a friendship that you really care about. You never know. So I really enjoyed that from this because it shows these main characters how they are forming strong bonds because they're getting past the hard parts in the friendships. They are working toward having healthy and strong relationships. And that's a great thing to remember. So, negative points. That's it. Just this is just essential scenes. Really, that's it for me. That's the only thing. It just makes, like I said, it leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. It really does. All right, so let's wrap it up with my Christian viewer rating for Too Many Losing Heroes. I'm giving this anime a 5 out of 10. It's very disappointing. I'm very disappointed. So here's why. Here's why I'm giving it that. On the one hand, this anime does offer surprisingly heartfelt and even biblical themes and lessons. Chica's growth, you guys know my favorite character, her growth really stands out for me. And she wrestles with rejection. She learns to let go. She prioritizes friendship. She starts stepping into leadership and all of that with battling social anxiety and loneliness. We see different Bible verses play out in subtle but beautiful ways in her life alone, and also in the other main characters as well. And there are some solid messages here, about self-worth, contentment, celebrating others' happiness, even when your story looks different, big wins for relatability and redemptive storytelling, like big wins. But man, the sexual content is a recurring issue, like a really big one. From sexual jokes, a bunch of fan service heavy moments, to scenes that are flirting too much with nudity. Like it's really hard to ignore, really difficult. So it's not just one or two moments. It's, like I said, it's sprinkled throughout the show. And that alone might be a deal breaker for some. And I don't know. It's too much, especially if we're trying to guard our hearts and we just desire something cleaner. Like, we don't need all that. At least we shouldn't need all that. Right? But, and there's the very little profanity. It's just one word. If you could get past it, not a big deal. There are some creepy scenes, but again, not a big deal. Doesn't last very long. But all in all, this anime has heart, and I can see how it might speak to certain viewers, but you'll need to use discernment. If you're sensitive to sexual humor or trying to stay clear of overly sensual content, this is not the anime for you. It's not. And it's a shame. That's it for today's episode. Thank you for watching. I hope this episode blessed you. And if it did, feel free to share, leave a rating. Whether you eat, sleep, or watch anime, do it all for the glory of God. Grace and peace.